Back in the mid-'80s, a horror movie was released upon audiences slightly different than the average horror film at the time. This film mixed Lifetime movie-esque suspense with gory slasher-style horror. It featured a really great cast and a refreshing story, making it a hit with both audiences and critics alike. It spawned 2 sequels and eventually a remake all the way in 2009, with those films being ranked from successful to critical failures. Although generally liked by fans of the genre, the Stepfather series has seemed to disappear from people's radars, and that's a tragedy, as it deserves to be seen by new audiences. So with this video, I hope to either remind fans of the series of its awesomeness, or tell future fans about this cool series of films. So with that, stay tuned, don't adjust your dial, because this is the Stepfather.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Morrison isn't his real name.
What is it?
God knows, we don't. His personal history was falsified and his prints were untraceable. It was possible Morrison had done it before.
The Stepfather is a 1987 American psychological slasher film directed by Joseph Rubin and starring Terry O'Quinn, Jill Schoelen, and Shelley Hack. O'Quinn stars as an identity-assuming serial killer who marries a widow with a teenage daughter. Having killed his previous family and changed his identity, his murderous tendencies continue after his stepdaughter becomes suspicious about him. The film is loosely based on the life of mass murderer John List, although the plot is more commonly associated with slasher films of the era than a true story. The film was theatrically released on January 23, 1987 in the United States. It grossed $2.4 million at the box office and was well received by critics. The Stepfather has an 88% approval rating from Rotten Tomatoes and an average rating of 6.8 out of 10 out of 32 reviews. Film critic Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times gave the movie 2.5 stars out of 4 and commented, "Violence itself seems to sell at the box office, even when it's divorced from any context." Maybe that's what the filmmakers were thinking. What often happens, though, is that in an otherwise flawed film, there are a couple things that are wonderful. The Stepfather has one wonderful element, Terry O'Quinn's performance. On Compostable Celluloid, the film ranked 3 out of 4 stars, with reviewer Jeffrey Anderson commenting, "Joseph Rubin directs competently, but perhaps not as playfully as the material could have used." But O'Quinn gets in a few prime moments, such as the startling one in which he forgets which persona he's currently occupying. Nevertheless, The Stepfather is still a high watermark of 1980s horror and suspense.
Jerry Blake, Henry Morrison, and before them, Bill Krager, they all had something in common. They were all for a time happily married, and they were all the same man.
Stepfather 2 is a 1989 psychological slasher film directed by Jeff Burr. It is a sequel to the first Stepfather and stars Terry O'Quinn as the title character. The cast includes notables such as Meg Foster, Caroline Williams, and Jonathan Brandis. In Stepfather 2, after cheating death by surviving both being stabbed and shot, psychotic killer Jerry, played by Terry O'Quinn, is placed in a mental institution, but he soon murders his doctor and escapes. Taking on a dead man's identity, he moves to an upscale neighborhood in Los Angeles and sets his sights on local woman Carol, played by Meg Foster, slowly winning her heart. Carol's son Todd, who's played by Jonathan Brandis, however, grows suspicious of his mom's new lover. After a test screening of the film, studio executives Harvey and Bob Weinstein complained about the lack of blood and demanded reshoots. Jeff Burr refused and director Doug Campbell was brought in. In an interview, Burr commented, "They cut a little bit of the film out and they added some badly done blood effects. Badly done because Terry O'Quinn refused to do it. Really, they were meaningless, so that was irritating." Stepfather 2 was originally intended to be released direct-to-video. However, the producers were impressed enough with the sequel that it was released in the theaters. The film was given a limited release theatrically in the United States by Millimeter Films in November '89. It grossed $1,519,796 domestically at the box office. The film received mostly negative reviews. Variety stated this dull sequel reduces the intriguing premise of the original Stepfather to the level of an inconsequential, tongue-in-cheek slasher film. Richard Harrington of the Washington Post wrote that the film was cliche-ridden and lacked the reality-rooted horror that made the original film so effective, finishing his review by stating Stepfather 2 is just slick marketing, trying to capitalize on unsettling art, and failing badly at that.
In a perfect community, a perfect mom
I love you very much, Andy.
can meet a perfect stranger.
You found us.
I sure did.
She knows
Stepfather
what
3
she
is a
wants.
1992 American slasher film directed and written by Guy Magar and starring Robert Whiteman and Priscilla Barnes. A television movie produced by HBO, Stepfather 3 is the second sequel to 1987's The Stepfather and concerns the titular serial killer seeking out yet another all-American family to become a part of, using plastic surgery to disguise himself from the authorities. For the opening scene in which Gene Clifford undergoes plastic surgery, director Guy Magar filmed an actual plastic surgery procedure, with no special effects used during the scene. The film was shot over the course of 25 days in Los Angeles, with a budget of $1.8 million. Reviews of the film are varied, with Variety's Tony Scott stating the film lurches on without much credibility, before going on to say blood spurts, but director Guy Magar doesn't make the horror convincing. The simplistic storyline and the unconvincing portrayal by Whiteman haven't been enhanced by indifferent production values. Entertainment Weekly's Doug Broad gave the film a D+, referencing it to a poorly scripted, all-too-familiar chiller, also calling Robert Whiteman robotic and a weak substitute for previous death-dealing dad Terry O'Quinn. Time Out Film Guide stated that the film is far better than one might expect and called Whiteman's performance more barmy than ever, and with that prissy, scared, whiny voice, makes a perfect fist of it.
Stepfather 3, a family tradition, continues.
Sleep tight. Daddy needs a family. Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Still can't believe my mom didn't come to the airport.
She has some things to do.
You met this guy?
He seems cool.
Seems like she's rushing into things.
At least you have me.
The Stepfather is a 2009 American slasher film and a remake of the 1987 horror film of the same title. The film was directed by Nelson McCormick and stars Dylan Walsh, Cella Ward, Penn Badgler, Amber Heard, and John Tenney. In 2009's The Stepfather, Michael Harding returns home from military school. He discovers that his mother has a new man named David in her life. Though David makes Michael's mother very happy, Michael cannot seem to shake feelings of distrust. He becomes increasingly suspicious of the man and wonders if the pleasant exterior hides a sinister side. Terry Quinn, who portrayed the Stepfather in the first two installments of the series, was approached by director Nelson McCormick to appear in the remake in a cameo role, but according to producer Mark Morgan, O'Quinn turned down the offer. The Stepfather received negative reviews. Review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes gave the film a rating of 11% based on 61 reviews, with a rating average of 3.4 out of 10. The site's general consensus reads, "This tepid remake of the 1987 cult classic lacks the tension and satirical undercurrents of the original." On Metacritic, which assigns a weighted average score, the film has a score of 33 out of 100, based on 11 critics indicating generally unfavorable reviews. Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times wrote of the film being a handsome, thoughtfully crafted production that generates a mounting terror, securely anchored by assured performances, consistent psychological persuasiveness, and believable dialogue. Though reviews for the Stepfather series have been up and down, it's nevertheless something that you should definitely check out. It's one of my favorite series and has great performances by everybody involved. Definitely check it out, as you can check out Stepfather 1, 2, and 3 on streaming platforms everywhere. And if it was up to me, I'd skip the remake. It's really just a flashy, overproduced, modernized remake of the film that really misses on a lot of the points that made the first three so good. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching Universe Retro, and don't forget, in this universe, we keep it retro. See you guys.